Welcome to Mindfully Sovereign, the podcast that invites you to reclaim your feminine self authority and unleash the abundance within. My name is Sapha, I am your host, and I'm here to help guide you past your limiting beliefs and into the heart of your unwavering and undeniable power. This podcast is all about reclaiming your feminine self authority, learning the art of self seduction, and awakening your inner goddess so that you can become an aligned match to your most abundant life yet. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and get ready to become mindfully sovereign. Hello, welcome back to season 4 of Mindfully Sovereign. It has been a little while. I needed some time to take a break after the Women Thrive Summit. There was so much beautiful energy exchanged, and there was so many powerful conversations. And you got to meet some of the incredible women from the summit from last year. And then I needed a little break to focus on really integrating all of the work that I did during that time on working with my clients. And so it's been a little bit of a longer pause than usual for the podcast to come back, but we are back and I am so excited. And I feel like today I am just pumped up. I have been sitting with a couple of things in my heart for the last couple of months, and I feel like this is the perfect time to start talking about them, to sink our teeth into some nuance, some important conversations, and to start relating to ourselves from a place of personal empowerment and personal sovereignty. Because, as you know, those are the foundations for my work. And that I really believe is one of the key elements of what allows us to transform our lives. So, again, welcome back. I am so excited to be here with all of you, and I am ready to get the ball rolling. So, what I want for us to focus on today is actually a topic that has been very top of mind, very top of heart, very top of soul, even if we can call it that, for a little while now. And I'm concerned, and I am approaching it from a many different angles. And this has to do with the conversation of the ever increasing shrinking of our bodies that we are seeing come back to the surface now that we have availability of some of these drugs that are being utilized to help people, but also are being utilized to help minimize our bodies. And so I want to have a conversation with you today about what this means for us in a very real sense and where I'm concerned. But before I get ahead of myself, let me share something a little bit vulnerable with you. And you may or may not already know the story. So bear with me if you do. So growing up, I had a pretty intense sense of self disdain and self hatred toward myself. I really felt like the me that I was not only not enough, but wrong in some way, shape, or form. And one of the ways in which this disconnect and this personal self hatred showed up in my life a lot was through my eating disorder. And I think a lot of times we hear the words eating disorder and we have very exacting imagery as to what we believe that eating disorder actually is. We have either a picture of someone who is wholly emaciated, not eating, or binging, or throwing up. We have these ideas that it has to be a very extreme and very easily to see extreme. In reality, there is a vast disconnect for a majority of the feminine population, as I have seen over the last decades of my life, with how we connect with our food. And I'm going to go a little bit further into that in a minute. But first, let me take you a little bit deeper into what was going on with mine. So, on the surface, people might have thought that I was fine and I was just a normal, healthy kid living her life and would not have even considered the possibility that I had a disordered relationship with my food, despite the fact that the signs were very clearly there. And I just remember how heavy this felt to my body because the most real truth that I could tap into at that time in my life was that, again, I was wrong. There was something wrong with me. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't worthy of love. I wasn't worthy of tenderness or care or provision. I definitely didn't believe that I was worthy of nutrition in the sense that I felt like anything that I put in my body was going to be fuel for a version of my body that I didn't want to inhabit. I grew up being told that I was chubby, that I had a great belly, that, I just so many different things. And I noticed how people treated me when I was maybe a little bit fuller. And I have to tell you actually something too, a little bit of a detour, bear with my ADHD brain today. But I actually recently found a couple of like videos and pictures from when I was younger. I was just a kid with kitty fat. It's not like I was morbidly obese, but that was the way that I was getting treated. I was always being questioned. You sure you want to have that quesadilla? Like just things, underhanded things. And then at school, it was how it always is with children, like little bullying comments here and there. And I will never forget. I'll tell you when this changed and how it changed the structure of my brain and why this is important to the conversation that we're having today. So bear with me. So at the time, I was still living in Mexico City. And we used to visit my family a lot in Nashville, Tennessee. And one year we visited over for Christmas, and it was a wonderful, one of my favorite memories of all time, but it was also one of the harshest memories that I have because during that time, I became seriously ill. I'm talking running to the ER. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with me at the time. I was losing so much fluid. I was just not in a good way. My life was a little bit at risk during this time. And it was a life altering experience. So, what happened was that apparently I had contracted all three kinds of salmonella, unbeknownst to me. And they presented themselves or they manifested in a very aggressive way while we were over here. And so at the hospital, I remember I went in looking and feeling a certain way, and I came out completely different version of who I was. So I came in and I had curves and I had like that baby fat and I was just like a very particular way, right? And when I came out, I was skin and bones because within a matter of days, everything was completely drained out of me. It was a trauma for my body, it was a trauma for my brain, and it was received with, like, accolades and flowers, and all of a sudden, I was getting asked to be people's girlfriend, and I was more accepted by the popular girls in school. It just became this crowning moment of glory, a moment that almost killed me, a moment that really put me in a challenging situation in my life. Like it was a traumatic event. It was not fun and games. It was not like I had, gone into a diet and then I came back and I looked like this. And but I think that's my point is like the worst part was I came back and all of a sudden some of the bullying had changed or it stopped altogether. Some of the boys were asking me out on dates. Some of the girls were finally wanting to like spend time with me. It changed everything for me. You might have even considered it changing things for the better. I sure as hell did. I thought it was, wow, this was the best gift I had ever been given was the gift of skinniness. And from that moment forth, it became my biggest hyperfixation. It was my obsession. It was literally the only thing I could think about was to stay as skinny as possible for the rest of my life. It was just something that I was unwilling to give up on. It was the only thing I could think about. I didn't really even care about much else. I wasn't really thinking about my future or school or things I was gonna do at that point. The only thing that mattered to me was to remain as small as possible for as long as possible, and I didn't care how I was going to get there. And so as time went on, this really diseased connection with myself and this really strained perception of self through the lens of this growing eating disorder in my life became all encompassing. And it led me to yo yo diets and it led me to starve myself in ways that people weren't noticing that I was doing it. It led me to take laxatives. It led me to take pills so that I could lose weight. And actually, later on, some of those pills, I mean, this had repercussions. It really did. Some of those pills did exacerbate a condition that I had because at that time, and I didn't know this, but I guess my heart was already struggling some, right? And so by the time I started consuming these ephedrine pills, if you know, you know, this is like a whole era in time. I'm really aging myself here for you. But like at that time, those pills went and aggravated a heart condition that I would later find out was going to need a heart operation, and everything. So my point is, I spent most of my young life, and then also my young adult life, with only one goal in mind, and it was to be as small as possible. And that's it. That's what I fueled myself with, morning, day, and night. That's all I would think about. And it was everywhere. It wasn't just internal, it was what I was seeing in society. It was in the magazines I read, it was in the TV shows I watched, it was in the movies, it was everywhere, and it was always a demand for people to become smaller. And actually, I'm gonna take that back. It was not a demand for people to become smaller, it was a demand for women to be as small and as fragile as possible. And I thankfully, through my practice of mindfulness, through my yoga practice, through my own process of self seduction, through all of these tools that I garnered over a lifetime and over decades, was able to break that and have a beautiful relationship with myself that is very genuine, that is not forced, that allows me to really build intimacy with who I am in my body, with my fat rolls, with my cellulite, with my strong, with my strength, with my muscles, with everything, like with my wrinkles, with everything. At every single cycle change, at every single turning of the wheel, so to speak, I'm there with myself, for myself, so that I can support myself and love on myself. So it was formative and it was important. And one of the things that I really relished as I healed myself was that it seemed as if we as a society were going into conversation about how to stop the process of shrinking down that we had been cramming down women's throats for so long. It seems like we were finally wanting to have conversations about what it was like to have a healthy body, to be healthy, to not necessarily look like you were skin and bones and have that be the marker, but to live a healthy life in whatever body shape, size that you had. And it was at the time also where I even furthered my own healing by finding the beautiful tool of intuitive eating that I've shared about before on this podcast. And I not only did intuitive eating heal my relationship with my body further than I had already been able to take it, like really just up leveled it in a way that I can't even describe. Not only did it help in that regard, but then it also awakened my own intuitive knowing, my sense of my witchiness, my ability to realize that the big voice that I had been quieting down inside of my heart and inside of my body, inside of my gut for so long was important. So this was a great time. And I was really starting to see some of those changes come about. But there was still a lot underneath the surface. And I worried even then about what this was going to become. Because one of the things that we've become very adept at is approaching things from not only a surface level, but as palatable a baseline as possible without ever getting into the weeds, without ever going into the trenches, without ever doing any of the excavation necessary to really figure out what's going on. Because, yeah, we were all saying health at every size and body positivity and all of these things. And we were trying to empower one another to love ourselves deeply without this constant need to fit a size zero, while at the same time, society around us still kept insisting that nil sizes were the thing, that skin and bones were still sexy, and that if we really believed that you could be healthy at every size, you were a moron who didn't understand BMI, or you were really encouraging this idea of this is not what it has been called, but I'm going to frame it this way because it's my verbiage. It's what my brain is thinking right now. Is it's this fat ideation or fat idolatry, and that it just it just became this thing, this kerfuffle. It was a performative kerfuffle of fuckery. It was not. It became a trend, and so when things are trendy, the second something newer, shinier, more appealing by, the guidelines of whatever celebrity or culture or phenomenon are in our scope of societal awareness at that time, is going to come along and trump that and bring up the new trend, right? So it was, for all of our talk of, You are beautiful no matter what size, body shape, etc. For all of our Dove commercials and for all of these like affirmations and all of these other things that we were holding on to, there was no depth in our understanding of what the conversation needed to be like. There was no exploration of what it actually is to fall madly in love with ourselves, what it actually is to care for our bodies, to nourish our spirits, to nourish ourselves at every point in our lives, to understand that everybody's body is different and everybody's body changes from day to day, and that we do have the need and the ability and the challenge of adapting our nutrition to that, for example, that medicine has never really been looking at a female body, and it's the same with when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to weightlifting, when it comes to exercise. We haven't really had that, and so we were not having those conversations yet. So we stayed at the surface. We walked around and we exclaimed these things, everybody's body is beautiful, and yet I wanna make sure that I stay a size 4 or 2, because I mean, you look great, and that's super brave of you to be able to just embrace your curves like that, but I couldn't. It really just doesn't look good on me. Like, I feel like when I gain weight, my face gets deformed. I feel like when I gain weight, my arms just really keep everything, and then I really don't like showing them. So you are brave and great and amazing, and I so admire you for showing your body like this. But I need to like be very rigid with my calories, and I know that I have to like count every last calorie, and I know that if I go even just a little bit above my daily intake next morning, I'm gonna have to make it up and work out harder. Does this sound familiar? Because I saw it repeatedly. I've been seeing it for a decade. It's actually one of the reasons why I started doing the work that I do. You might have again heard me say this before, but I think it's important so that we have a baseline for this conversation is when I moved past my eating disorder and I broke those chains and just fell in love with the process of existence and self-care, self-love, but like genuine self-care, not the marketable version. Like what it was like to really take care of the most cherishable being on this planet, right? Ourselves. When I did that, I suddenly had this like thirst to share this with other women. It became important for me that every woman in this world could see herself as a beautiful, potent, magnificent, worthwhile, sacred, divine fucking force in this world, and that she could embody that in full in every area of her life so that legitimate change could take place, so that her voice would carry her further, so that she could stand up for injustice when needed, so that she could embrace her children and teach them how to love themselves despite the fact that the world around them might have been telling them not to. And I had this really clear, crystal clear moment in my life when my niece, who was 6 years old, came up to me, and she was precious and adorable. She just looked at me with the most heartbreaking gaze and asked if she was overweight, and it crumbled me. I didn't want her to go through what I went through. I didn't want her to lose herself to this monster. I wanted better for her. I wanted better for the women in my yoga classes who, after class, would sometimes come up to me and ask me what my diet was, because I think perceptually to them, the fact that I was practicing and teaching yoga and at the time still was a much slimmer version of myself, because I was thin presenting ever since that monstrous sickness that I told you about. I was very thin from then on until I basically was like in my late 30s. So I think that they saw that and they immediately wanted to shrink themselves down. And so they would come up to me and ask for advice and from for nutrition. And I felt very ill-equipped to help them because number one, that was not my degree. Like I did not, study that. And number two, I heard the context of what they were actually asking. They didn't want to be healthier. They wanted to be thinner. They wanted to be smaller. And so what I did was that's when I went and I studied nutrition and I started bringing in clients for nutrition consultations. And the second we sat down, what it really became about was their hearts, their souls needed integration. There was like a soul retrieval that needed to take place. Shadow work hadn't been done. They hadn't explored who they were. They didn't know how to love themselves. And the reason I say that is because we'd start working together and they would bare their soul to me. That was one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is we would start working together. And if they started allowing themselves to nourish themselves for once, instead of trying to keep their calorie count as low as humanly possible, they would start feeling better elsewise. Like all of a sudden, they weren't getting the monthly flu or cold. They were stronger. Their workouts were a lot more powerful. But if that scale went up, immediately they would come back to me and be like, but we must be doing something wrong because I'm gaining weight. So this isn't working. Whatever we are doing is not working. And I am getting fatter than ever. And this is just not not it. And so I remember thinking, okay, the change needs to be something else then. The change needs to be the relationship of self to self. And again, that's what this conversation has been lacking from the beginning. We've been clamoring that we want to be happy for everybody's body. We've been clamoring that we are all beautiful no matter what. We've been saying all of these things and it's been very surface level. None of it has been truly embodied. None of it has really landed. It's all been around this trend. All of a sudden it became trendy to have curves. It became trendy to have a padunkadonk. Became trendy to have a hourglass shape. And then when the same said people who sort of set that trend before us, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, showed up on a TV show skinnier than skinny, all of a sudden the conversation reverted back. And it was focusing on what we can do. How can we get there? What is this new thing that everybody is using to lose all of this crazy weight? I want in. I want to be a part of this. And it has been incredibly damaging, just as it was the first time around. We started out looking for that heroine chic look. We wanted to be Kate Moss. We were wearing the super low rise jeans. We were pinching parts of our bodies to make sure there was no fat rolls. We were coming up with ridiculous ways of measuring how small we could get. We had pro Anna. We had all of these really damaging places and spaces and conversations and ways of existing. And we barely put a minimal, almost non existent band aid over the situation and yet focus that band-aid on someone else's quote unquote hurt while at the same time still picking at the scabs of our own very open wound. Wasn't even like a scab. And then we wonder why all of a sudden now the shrinkification of bodies is back on trend and why it's become so pervasive and why we are so hyperfixated on it again. There is no wonder. We we never went there. We never healed ourselves. We never allowed ourselves the permission to be embodied as we are. In reality, truthfully, we kept turning a blind eye to the real issues. We kept talking about things that had nothing to do with the thing. And now we are back at square one. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because we all deserve better. We deserve better. We need better. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the other generations coming behind us. We even owe it to the generations that came before us. And and this is where I really want to take us. I want you to stop and consider because this isn't just about, oh, you should be able to wear your size 6 jeans, 12 jeans, whatever. I'm not even like getting into that. I just want you to consider for a moment that the same systems in place right now that are trying to devalue and enslave the feminine are the same systems that benefit the most from you appearing, feeling, and being fragile, weak, and less than, because the shrinking isn't just about the shrinking of your body. It's not just about the shrinking to fit into your jeans. It's about the shrinking of your voice. It's about the shrinking of your ability to think. It's about the shrinking of your ability to defend yourself, to outrun a predator, to fight for your rights, to stand up and say this isn't right. It's about your ability to exist and take up space in this world freely and powerfully. Yes, it is that fucking deep. And no, I am not dismissing the full entirety of the conversation in terms of health. And look, there is a lot of nuance. We as humans are losing our ability to enter into conversations with nuance, to enter into conversations with a willingness to want to uncover more, to listen to each other, to observe, to ask of ourselves what is and isn't working, to take what does, to leave what doesn't, and not to make everything about it is my way or the highway. We have become a society absolutely fixated on if it's not what I say, you gotta beat it. If this is the only way that things can be, or you're an evil person. It's black or white. And that's not how life works. There's a lot of shades of gray in between. There's a lot of room for nuance. Yes, these GLP-1 medications are amazing and they can help so many people claim their lives back. I am in perimenopause. There is some small amount of research starting to show up, because also remember that medicine hasn't really been made for women, right? It, it's the whole thing. But it's starting to show up that suggests that it is possible that a small, minuscule microdose amount of the GLP-1 medications can help with inflammation, can help with brain fog, can help with some of the major symptoms of perimenopause, and help with the visceral fat accumulation that happens during this transitional cycle in our lives. I think that's great. I think that that's a conversation that we can have. I think that's something that we can and should explore. And I think that's fantastic. I just worry that we are once again leaning so far in the opposite direction that we are utilizing these things as an excuse to continue to minimize ourselves, because the truth is that we know that the world that we live in does not value a woman who is not a copy paste representation of the ideal that someone somewhere out there decided needed to be la calcomanía, the freaking mold out of which we all should be born from, and that we should match in order to find some sort of relevance or some sort of worth or some sort of value or some sort of status in this freaking world and in this life. And I see that that is complete and utter bullshit. And it's important for us to talk about this. It's exceedingly important at a time where trad wife is becoming a bigger conversation, at a time where people are looking to quote unquote traditional values and traditional ideas, because everything feels so uncertain. Everything feels so unreal. Everything feels so sharp and scary. And we don't feel like we have a place, a safe plan, a place to land in. And so the idea is that if I have any kind of semblance of stability and any kind of semblance of control, that it is going to change. And that is also a falsehood, but that is what is leading a lot of people, and especially a lot of the younger generation, to lean much more in the direction of the old, quote unquote, in the old days, things were better. In the old days, when the women stayed at home and they took care of the kids and they didn't work and they were maintained by their provider. Yes, it is that important. This isn't just a conversation about whether you should or shouldn't be on a GLP-1. This is a conversation about what happens when bodies sense senses of selfhood and a whole energetic field is being asked to shrink to the point of brittleness, to the point of fragility, to the point of, at this rate, if you stay this week, I am going to be able to control you more easily than ever. And that is a conversation that is worth having. This isn't just about the size zeros anymore. And I don't think it ever has been. Again, we never went there. It took us too long and we didn't want to. We wanted the quick fix. We wanted the band-aid. We wanted the band-aid on someone outside of ourselves so that we could cheer them on and go, yeah, you're so brave. You're so amazing. You're showing your curves. I'm never going to do that. I'm going to count every calorie. I'm going to hide here. I'm going to keep doing yoga. I'm going to keep going to spin class. And after spin class, I'm going to do Pilates. And after Pilates, I'm going to do weight training. And after weight training, I'm going to eat only one ounce of this because that's what keeps me happy. But you are amazing. You are the champion because you are the body positivity. Yeah, we can all be healthy at every size. Come on. And underneath all of that, we don't just have our hatred for ourselves. And listen, I am going to make a bold statement here and say that, in my opinion, and I have no science to back this up, this is just experiential and it is a thought, right? This isn't written in law. This isn't the absolute truth, and no one can like argue against it. No, no, no. But in my experience, and from what I have seen, not just with my clients, but with family members, with friends, with people in a community, what I have noticed is that a vast majority, I'm going to say maybe being generous, about 80% of the female population has a disordered relationship with their nourishment, a disordered relationship with their selfhood, a disordered relationship with their bodies, with their minds, with their hearts, and with their sense of worth and value in this world. And there are many reasons why. And this is one of the many reasons why feminine embodiment and talking about the divine feminine and empowerment and all of these things is so fucking important to me. Why I'm so fired up about it, because there are so many different conversations that we need to be having about this, and they are all valuable and they are all needed, especially right now. But I am telling you right now, vast majority of women in this world don't love themselves, and they don't know how to care for themselves, and they conflate the illusion of not just smallness, but of performing an ideal that has been shoved down their throats from before they were even born, as caring for themselves, as self-care, as discipline, as all, all of these, as healthy, as all of these things that we are saying that they are when they are not, and they are masking something deeper, not just because of the hatred of the self, but because the people who despise the feminine and who have, and the systems who have wanted to keep the feminine underfoot, enslaved, subjugated, and in a state of not just subservience, but in a frame of mind where the feminine can be abused and taken advantage of and coerced and just exploited in every regard possible. They withstand a lot. They can win a lot by keeping us not only obsessed with, but bound. Almost as if it's almost as if, and I say that because I feel like actually, yeah, energetically, this makes sense that this is actually what's going on. It's almost as if they would have bound, like with magic. You know what binding is in magic? This is exactly what I'm talking about and why I'm asking you to consider this. It's as if they would have bound every woman and every lineage of the feminine to these ideals, because the truth is that the more we hate ourselves, the more ready the more malleable, the more manipulate, like the more ready to be like manipulated we become, the more all of these things happen. If you are not caring for yourself, you are very likely to externalize your worth. You're more likely to put your eggs in someone else's basket and to give them the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, and let them be the ones that are at the helm of your life. Your life. You are the sovereign of your life. You hear me say this all the time. You need to remember that you are the one. You're the one, the biggest, the most important, the one and only love, true love of your life. And not only that, but the one that you get to care for the rest of your life, sincerely, completely, devotedly, wholeheartedly. And you are the one that gets to make decisions about your life, about who you let in, how, to what degree. You're the one who is choosing. You're the one who's creating in your life. You're the one who's at the helm, but you're not going to be the one at the helm, and you're not going to get to a place of personal sovereignty if you continue externalizing. And if you keep looking out there for something that is missing inside of you perceptually, because there's nothing missing inside of you. But if you keep doing that and you keep allocating your power to whether it's the number on a scale, whether it's the latest trend in body shape, because this is a trend. And believe me, the second everybody has the same trend, something else is going to come along and it's going to change again. This is exactly how it goes. No matter what, that is going to be your ally. You're giving up your free will. You're giving up your ability to show up for yourself. You're giving up your voice. You're giving up everything about you. It matters. It's a conversation we need to be having. Again, it is not just about a look. And no, before you come after me, I don't believe that we need to be criticizing people's bodies. I just think that it's time that we have honest, nuanced conversations about the fact that this is in fact happening. We can't just turn a blind eye and go, well, I don't have to comment on anybody's body. Their body is their body. I can't say anything about how small they're getting. We can't fucking keep hiding. That's the same as enabling. We can't keep doing that. No, I don't believe that we get to pass judgment on how a people looks and based off of how they look, say that person is healthy or not. That's not what I'm claiming at all. Nor is it up to us to say whether a person is or isn't this, that, and the other. It's not up to us to say, well, that person has an eating disorder and that person, no, 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 no. However, what we do get to do is pay attention to what is going on around us and to say, hey, alarms are popping up or they should be popping up because this ever shrinking mentality, the return of the heroine chic, the frailty that we are observing, that's dangerous. And it's dangerous not because we are trying to take that person's body autonomy and dictate how they should look and we are dictating that they should look fat or whatever. No, it's important because outside of the look, it is saying something very clear about our values. It is saying something very clear about who we get to be in this world as women. It is saying something very clear about a lot of stuff that has to do with politics. It has to do with systems that have been put in place to keep us small and that are fighting very hard to take away our rights to even exist in many different ways in this world. These are important conversations. And if we don't start seeing them now, we're going to lose a battle that our ancestors have been fighting since way before we were even here. We can't talk about feminine empowerment and then starve ourselves. I'm sorry. We can't. We can't talk about feminine empowerment and building empires and breaking the glass ceiling and doing all of these incredible things because women are awesome and powerful and incredible and blah blah. And then at the same time, hyper focus on how tiny we can get because that is the latest trend. We just can't. That's not how it works. These two things are not compatible. I'm sorry if you don't like that, but it's the freaking truth. And we can't keep hiding behind the illusion of things because one of the other reasons why this trend is taking over and why the original stuff didn't the way the original movements of body positivity and everything else that we were fighting so hard for didn't take is because we were doing this hand wavy thing. Not only were we like, you're amazing, I'm not amazing. And yes, we were doing that, but we were also doing the old, I'm healthy. I can eat whatever I want. I'm eating intuitively and I'm doing it great. And then if we look at what you're actually eating and taking in a day, you had one slice of pizza. This is still a disordered eating. I'm sorry. You can't hide behind the words of something like intuitive eating and then use that to say, oh, well, I eat intuitively and I lost 10 pounds. I eat intuitively and that's how I stay skinny because of this. That's not how it was intended. And I'm just using an example. It's not how it was intended. It's not how it works. And you're just lying to yourself. And I see this so often. I have conversations consistently with women who really do believe that they are showing up for themselves from a place of empowerment, who really believe that they are eating in a way that is nourishing for their bodies, who are taking care of their bodies. But when I've been around them, I can see and I know that this isn't the full truth because what did you have for breakfast? Some tea. What did you have for lunch? Oh, I think I just had some fruit. I just forgot. And then before you know it, at night, it's like, oh my God, I had a pizza and an ice cream and it was great and I loved it. And see, I can eat whatever I want because I take really good care of myself. I am so amazing at intuitive eating. I'm so healthy. I have such a healthy relationship with food. And I'm sorry, but that's not the truth. It's just not. Healing your relationship to food and healing your relationship to self, not only do they take time, not only will you have moments where you stumble, not only are you going to have moments where you're going to struggle and you're going to be like having to have really deep, serious conversations with yourself about it, but it doesn't look perfect. And it isn't something that is measured by the falsehood above the surface. Make sense? Like, this is just not how it works. Healing your relationship to your food and to yourself is not the same or is not actually taking place when you are saying that you are doing these things and yet you had one morning when you woke up bloated and you were like, oh my God, I'm so bloated. I need to start working out again. I don't know what I did wrong. I feel so fat. I feel so. That's the other thing is like, I hear a lot of times people feel full and they consider their fullness dangerous. This is also in the eating disorder world, if you know, this is actually a thing. Just because you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, right? Just because you're feeling full doesn't mean you have to starve yourself for the rest of the day. And it doesn't mean that you have to earn the food that you ate the next morning by doing your workout. And a lot of times in these health adjacent or wellness adjacent worlds that we have created for ourselves, which are the band aid I've been telling you about, that's what's happening. It's a sneaky, sneaky thing because I told you at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of times we think that to have an eating disorder, you have to look emaciated, or you have to absolutely be starving yourself, or you have to absolutely be throwing up everything that you eat, and that is not how it works. That is not how it works. A disordered relationship to your food is very complex, and there are ways in which it sneaks in that you wouldn't even know. It's just but you can't see it if you are unwilling to be honest with yourself, to witness yourself, to converse with yourself, to be intimate with yourself, and to put yourself in a position where you are at the helm of your life so that you can say, you know what? Yeah, I've been kind of like pretending that I really love my body. But I woke up this morning bloated, and immediately I am thinking about how fat I am and how gross I look and how nobody's going to ever love me and no one is going to ever want to have a relationship with me because of just bloat. And that tells me that there is a lot of work that I still need to do. And it's okay if you are there. You've heard me say this before as well, but healing isn't a one and done type thing. We are too readily looking for immediate cures. We just think that if I just take this red pill, that's going to fix everything. If I just do this one thing one time, this one meditation, this one tapping session, this one thing, just this one time, or this one week, or this one month, that's it. I'm done. I'm cured for the rest of my life. That's not how it works. I'm sorry, and that makes you feel uncomfortable, and I get it, and it's challenging. And yes, of course, we want things to happen quickly. And yes, of course, we want to feel like all the work that we do takes us somewhere. And that's actually going to be the conversation for the next episode. But it gets to take time, it gets to be a lifetime of relationship with yourself. But we've become the emperor and we're not wearing any clothes. And that's why we've been fooled, we've been bamboozled. Someone sold us the invisible clothes that didn't exist, and they said, "This is your body positivity, this is your empowerment," and we believed it, and underneath it, there was nothing. And that's why we are where we are with the shrinking bodies, with the dysregulation in our nervous systems that comes along with like seeing all of a sudden all of these small people. And I was wondering, well, what's wrong with me? Like, do I need to get on a GLP-1? Do I need to start doing this? What if I like all of a sudden, what if I take this pill and that injection and this injection and then maybe I can fit? It's the same thing. We've had this conversation. We've been here before and it doesn't benefit you. It doesn't benefit you. It benefits the systems, it benefits the people outside of you who are trying to control you and keep you small for a reason. So, take some time to have an honest conversation with yourself about how you see yourself. about how willing you are to show up for yourself when things are not perfect, about how much you can love onto yourself when things are not perfect, and how much you can pour into yourself, knowing that you are worthy and deserving of love, of care, of tenderness, of cherishment, of nourishment, despite whatever we are being sold at the moment. Have an honest conversation with where you are in your healing journey, because if you really want to have a healthy relationship with your body and with your food, it's important that you recognize where the dis-ease is, and you may not see it yet. And sometimes it takes someone outside of yourself to help you get there. And if you feel like you suspect that something isn't right, but you're not sure, and you want someone to help ask questions of your subconscious in an intelligent way so that you can get to the root of that and aliven the connection, the relationship to self, then I am here for you. And you can always reach out to me. My door is always open. The email is info at your soulful goddess, and as in you are a soulful goddess, right? Your soulful goddess. You can also find me on Instagram at mindfully sovereign. And of course, you've got the podcast. I am so grateful to be back with you, and I can't wait for our next conversation. Things are getting juicier, and I am so ready for this. And please be gentle with yourself, be kind with yourself, and let me know. I would love to hear from you on this. I'm going to try and do a live as I do whenever. So if you're brand new here, whenever the episode airs, it's usually on a Monday because that's when the episodes air. Whenever the episode airs that week, I go live on Instagram and I do a little Q&A. Sometimes people show up and we have a great kiki. Sometimes no one's there and I'm just talking to myself, and that's fine. But if you want to have a conversation about this, oof, I would love it. So join me again, Instagram at mindfully sovereign, and you can email me info at yoursoulfulgoddess.com. But the details are going to be in the description anyway. Welcome back. Stop shrinking yourself.